Hi, I'm Barry Zwarenstein. There's something I wanted to address to all of you out there who are veterans who may be watching this at the moment. I'd like you to think for a minute about when you were on operations, how was your emotional world? Did you train yourself to shut off? Do you remember what that felt like? Do you remember having to shut off? Do you remember having to mute down your emotional world to be able to cope? To feel too deeply can really cloud one's judgment. To be able to stay quite detached allows you to operate effectively, to keep men around you safe, to keep yourself safe, and to keep yourself alert. Now, if you look at that as it exists over time, that shut-off switch starts to become quite entrenched. You start to feel less and less and less over time. But the interesting thing for me is that it's not about the feeling shutting off completely, because we know that when men lose mates, when they see things that are tragic, they feel deeply. But the thing is, veterans have to recover, or operating soldiers actually have to recover extremely quickly. You can't be in an incident and then fall apart for hours or days. You have to be able to take that emotion, shut it off, box it up, and keep going. Now, that ability to encapsulate, detach, lock away, shut off, I think is a critical aspect of being able to function effectively under rigorous challenges and challenges of high risk. However, I think over time that becomes almost a wired-in response, and more over the years, what I'm seeing with numbers of veterans is that when they find themselves back in civilian territory, as I've often said, the brain doesn't differentiate between the military wiring and the civilian wiring. The military wiring, we're hypervigilant, constantly scanning, alert to sound, alert to change, aggressive responses. The brain doesn't just go when it gets into civilian life, okay, now I can switch over. It doesn't. It maintains those responses in civilian life. And I think part of what the brain actually maintains is that shut-off switch. And that, to some extent, I think has a challenge. It has a challenge for veterans, and I think it can have a challenge for their partners and their children. Now, I'm not basing this on any research. These are just thoughts, and I'm happy for this to turn into a dialogue. I'm happy to get feedback. And so I'm asking veterans out there who may be watching this, just what is your perception, what is your experience of your shut-off switch? Do you have it? Do you feel that it's not that you don't feel, but you feel that your range of feeling is slightly muted or significantly muted? Now, somebody said to me the other day, they said, I'm very aware of the shut-off switch. I'm aware that it trains me to survive and function highly effectively in challenging situations. And even though I'm aware of this, I know that the perceptions of others around me are that I'm connected, I'm a good dad, I'm a good husband. So it's not as if others are seeing it, but you feel it inside yourself. It's like internally, you know that the wave range of your emotional world is on a much narrow bandwidth. Now, I suppose if that's not causing any issues, then it's not necessarily a problem. But I also see men who find it very difficult to feel. And men who, I know a lot of men have described in their relationships where things can become potentially conflictual, when issues are raised, the sense of the possibility of conflict shuts them off, because there's a part of the brain that sees conflict as a doorway for an aggressive response, or a shutdown response, a freeze response, a flight response. So, numbers of veterans I've seen over the years under potential conflict or disagreement in relationships just cut and run. They shut down, they're out the door, and they head off for hours at a time, just trying to downregulate that part of their brain and their body to get back inside themselves and to come back feeling, as if they're more in control. Then there's the other response, of course, which is you meet potential for conflict and you upregulate your aggressive response. So now you're starting to kick in, and before you know it, you're in a full-blown conflict. Boundaries are being broken through. Everybody's really angry, and it's what I call an AD. So at that point in time, you're really in damage control after that. I think a lot of that has got to come from that shut-off switch, because the shut-off switch is there to, one, preserve you under potential situations of aggression or conflict or challenge. And the other one is also to ensure that you stay coherent so that you remain able to look after everyone else around you. Now we know that veterans, a lot of veterans, are incredibly good and skilled under high situations of change. They can enter situations of conflict or aggression and remain incredibly coherent because the shut-off switch kicks in and they stay absolutely clear and focused and are able to channel their behavior in really clear ways. So I guess the thing I'm asking everyone to think about is, what is your shut-off switch like? Do you feel that you're quite muted in your emotional world? Is it difficult for you to feel ranges of emotion, ranges of happiness, ranges of pleasure? What is it like for your emotional world or that shut-off switch when you are finding yourself in situations in civilian life where there's the potential for disagreement, the potential for conflict? What is it like about feeling love? What is the depth of your love like for your wife, for your kids? It's not that you don't love them, but it's the variability. Can you feel it in your body? How deeply can you feel it in your body? So this is just something I wanted to raise today. I must admit there's not lessons or strategies that have come to my mind in terms of how to work with it. It's just raising something that I haven't often seen talked about, and that can leave veterans feeling quite displaced inside themselves and disconnected to some extent from situations around them. And as I said, for numbers of veterans, it's really visible. I mean, the wives will often talk about how muted their responses are, how flat their responses can be, and they find that really frustrating. And then at the other level, there are veterans where, their partners really feel that they're there, they're strong, they're caring, they're supportive, but the veteran experiences inside him or herself that sense of mutedness. It's, instead of calling it a switch, it would almost be a dial, where that dial is, if let's say a civilian operating on a full open heart is at a 9 out of 10, that dial for a veteran might be at a 3 or a 4 or a 5 out of 10. So on the surface, you're looking very connected and feeling, but underneath that and behind that, it's actually quite muted. It's almost like you are trying to experience feeling through cotton wool. So just something to raise. I'd really love to hear comments from you out there around whether this resonates with you, what it feels like for you, whether this is an issue for you, what are the kind of things you've done to work with it, how have you begun to open your heart, what are you like when experiencing strong emotions of love, what are you like, what's your emotional world like where somebody wants to bring their truth to you, and that can be quite challenging. So, open doorway. I'd love to hear from you and look forward to your thoughts on this. Otherwise, have a good day and looking forward to chatting to you soon. Cheers. Bye.